Good morning and welcome to First UU. My name is Pharaoh. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a white lady in my 40s with brown hair. And today I'm wearing a silky blouse. I got dressed up today. If this is your first time here or your third or your 50th, we welcome you. Let us begin by acknowledging that we are gathered on the traditional territory of Niukanska people, known sometimes by the name Osage. The descendants of the people who were forcibly removed from this land make up the Osage Nation. We acknowledge their continued struggle for justice. This morning, the chalice lighter in the sanctuary is David. We light this chalice, a beacon of shared stories, illuminating the tales that shape us, the truths we carry, the dreams we weave. In its flickering light, we honor the stories that bind us together. The whispers of ancestors, the voices of the present, and the songs of those yet to come. May this flame guide us as we listen deeply, speak courageously, and live fully into the unfolding story of our lives.
Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy.
Hello. Oh, I'm on the other page. My name is Anna. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a white woman in my late 30s, so I have some nice white streaks along my face here, and I'm wearing a purple sweater with my star necklace because I love it. Time for All Ages is going to be fun today, so get ready to move. So warm up your muscles. Today, we're exploring how stories have the power to inspire us to change the world we live in. And as we have been exploring this month, stories can take on many forms, including songs. As Unitarian Universalists, we often express our ideas and the stories we want to tell or lift up in song. And one of those songs is called Building a New Way by Martha Sandifer, arranged by John Prescott. So for today's activity, the choir is going to be singing Building a New Way. We're going to have some fun with it. So I invite you to stand up and dance. Friends in the back, do you want to come up and show them your moves? If not, you can from the back, or you can sit and move, at least wave your hands in the air. Are we ready? They don't want to come up front, so we're going to go dance in the back. Oh gosh, I don't know. Have fun.
That was fun. Thank you, Anna and choir. So as y'all know, we are telling stories this month at First UU. And so when I got the email that there was a call for stories, I had just uncovered a file folder of some of the stories that my mom wrote. And not all of you know this, but my mother passed away in 1990 of breast cancer. She was only 46. I was only 12. So now I'm 47. This last year, getting older than her has been emotional, to say the least. But I found this story that she wrote. She was a journalist, and so she liked to write. And when I got the email, I was like, "Ooh, I have a story." So here it is. It's called She Went High, High into the Sky by Carol Kelly Vaden. It was a pretty fall day, the day after Labor Day, 1980, and my child was soaking up the last few days of summer turning into winter. She was jubilant that day. She had just learned to swing. She had conquered the balance motion of leaning back, leaning forward, propelling herself into greater and greater motion. Enjoying her newfound skills, she got carried away. She turned her hands loose from the swing's chains, lost her balance, and fell onto hard ground. It happened at her school, St. Peter Daycare Center. Pharaoh was 2 months shy of 3. Later, she described it to me this way. I went high, high into the sky, Mommy. I bumped to the ground. You shouldn't go so high, high into the sky, should you? I didn't know until 6 hours later that with the fall came a broken thigh bone. That information was still to come as slowly and painfully as the fall had come quickly. My life was then in transition, but about to settle down. I had been separated from my now former husband for close to a year. A few weeks before, he was ordered by the circuit court to pay child support. And with that payment, I would be able to rent a 2-bedroom apartment for my daughter and myself. She and I had lived with friends for the 10 months preceding her accident. Before the move into our new home, we had planned a week on the Gulf Coast in a loaned apartment. But that longed for soaking up the sun, a vacation from months of living out of suitcases, was not to be. Less than 10 minutes after Fairy, my nickname for my child, fell, I got a call from her principal. I got to the school about 30 minutes later, primed to keep her home the next day. I didn't know then that her leg was literally broken into 2 pieces. In the school's parking lot, I found Sister Mary Paul, administrator of St. Peter, holding Fairy on her lap, gently rocking her back and forth. I believe she's gone into shock, Sister said. I looked at my normally exuberant daughter, always as full of life as the insides of a washing machine. She was placid, very still in Sister's arms, smiling as sweetly as a pint-sized Madonna. My leg really does hurt, Mommy, she said, an almost ethereal calm seemed to envelop her. I was scared. I quickly called my friend Colleen, one of Pharaoh's 2 godmothers. In disjointed fashion, I told her of the accident, asking her to ride with us to the doctor's office. With Sister's help, I placed Fairy on the back seat of our station wagon. It hurts so much, my child said, not complaining, just educating. I know, baby. Tears were pushing into my eyes. Sister offered to ride with us, to hold Fairy. I declined gratefully, telling her instead about my arrangement with Colleen, promising to call soon and let her know the doctor's report. On the drive to the doctor's, Fairy drifted off to sleep. Colleen was standing on her curb, holding 2 pillows and a blanket. She opened the back door, put 1 pillow underneath the thigh, which had already, in less than an hour, swelled to twice its size. She placed the other under Fairy's head. She covered her with the blanket, then scooted in beside her. Well, drive, Carol. What are you waiting for? I put the car into gear, jerked off into the street, and began to cry. I'm so glad you were at home. I'm so glad you can go with me. What do you think it is? Colleen didn't respond immediately. Then she smiled gently. I don't know, but we'll soon see. My friend had the foresight to phone the pediatrician's office from her house. When we arrived, 2 women bearing a sleeping, swollen child were whisked through the waiting room and into a treatment cubicle. The doctor appeared, took 1 look at my sleeping child, then advised an orthopedic surgeon. Several calls later, 1 to Le Bonheur Children's Medical Center, and 40 minutes later, we were across town at the hospital. Dr. Miller had made contacts with the emergency room personnel, and Dr. Canal would be over as soon as he finished another emergency. They placed Pharaoh on a rolling bed, but couldn't give her any pain medication until the doctor arrived, x-rays were taken, and a diagnosis arrived at. With Colleen holding Fairy's hand, stroking her forehead, and Pharaoh drifting off into gentle sleep, then waking with a jerk, I left to phone Pharaoh's father. Next, there were admittance forms to fill out, hospital papers to sign, more phone calls followed. I called my lawyer, my parents, my office, Sister Mary Paul. Pharaoh's father, Wayne, arrived. He held her hand gently. We talked over Fairy's sleeping head in whispers, mentioning only the accident. Another good friend, Frances, walked into the emergency room while both Wayne and I were holding Pharaoh's hands. "Oh, Frances, I'm so glad to see you," I said. Crying, we hugged. "How did you know about this?" "Colleen called her," she said. The next few hours were a confused kaleidoscope. There was doctor's arrival, his explanation of Fairy's injury, then Fairy's eventual transfer to a room. The impact of Pharaoh's fall had caused the right thigh bone to cross in the shape of an X, thus the swelling. Many days would be needed in traction to pull the two broken pieces of bone back into a straight line so that they would eventually touch at the point of the break and grow back together. "It's a bad break, Carol," Dr. Canal said, "but in 2 or 3 months, she'll be as good as new." I looked in on my sleeping child once more, being prepped now for x-rays. Colleen, Frances, and I silently followed aides as they pushed the bed with my now drugged child aboard, down corridors, up elevators, down halls. Once inside her pristine room, later to be littered with papers, puzzles, and Play-Doh, we watched as 2 nurses carried out Dr. Canal's written instructions on placement of the traction bars. Small bags with different amounts of weights were positioned. Pharaoh winced, jerked, and opened her eyes. "Mommy, that hurts," she said weepily. "They're hurting my leg." "I know, baby, but they have to do it to make you well. It's going to be okay." The nurses at Le Bonheur that night and every day for the next 10 days were great. They became my army of emotional soldiers. The procedure of adjusting the weights that first night was finished about 9 p.m. "Why don't you and your friends go get something to eat, Miss Vaden?" asked the head nurse. "You must be starving and exhausted. We'll take care of your child. She's gone back to sleep and will be fine all night." I protested. The nurse gave me a gentle lecture on an abiding principle of pediatric care. "Your little girl will be okay without you, certainly for a few hours. Sick children often need firmer discipline than well children. You'll discover that." And I did. Countless times during that 12-day period, I was forced to leave my child's hospital bed. I never left without a whimper on her part. I never returned without receiving reports from nurses, friends, and strangers that the minute I left, Pharaoh's tears dried up like a desert. That initial lecture did not entirely free me of guilt, though. I spent the first night at her side, miserable on a hard cot. After 3 such nights, the nurses urged me to spend nights away from the hospital. I took their advice. My hospital schedule began to take shape. I was at Pharaoh's bedside early, usually at 6:30. I stayed with her through breakfast, x-rays, and repositioning of traction weights. The middle portion of my days were spent transforming our new apartment into a home. Late each afternoon, I returned to the hospital, spent several hours with Pharaoh, then left as Wayne arrived each night about 6. On the second day of Pharaoh's confinement, I made a simple but detailed schedule. I had already arranged for a week's vacation for our coastal trip. Now that time must be spent moving. More than a dozen friends offered to help, and I was able to schedule an adult friend to stay with Pharaoh almost every hour during daylight hours. My sister Barbara, the second of Pharaoh's 2 godmothers, flew over from her home in Atlanta, Georgia. "Things may not always go well with you, Carol, but there's never a dull moment," she said at the airport. The first 3 or 4 nights she was in Memphis, we slept in the new apartment on the floor, surrounded by unpacked cardboard boxes, filled paper sacks, and framed pictures. One day, Barbara and another friend, Helen, tackled a paint job. They transformed old, used twin beds into brilliant blue, new-looking beds for Pharaoh's new bedroom. With other help, I borrowed a fleet of pickup trucks and spent many days moving furniture into the apartment. From various attics around town, I collected all of my furniture, bric-a-brac, china, silver, and utensils that had been stored since early in my separation. Toward the end of Pharaoh's hospitalization, I had 2 long conferences with the hospital counselor. With her advice and help, I made more plans. First, to ease the trauma of Pharaoh's being put into a body cast, I decided to put one of her dolls in a body cast too. From our new home, I brought Kathy, one of Pharaoh's favorites, to the hospital. 2 days before Pharaoh got her cast, Kathy got hers. With gauze and plaster of Paris, the nurses fashioned a look-alike cast for Kathy. The experience gave Pharaoh the opportunity to show off Kathy in cast to friends who came to visit. And it also allowed Pharaoh a chance to visualize what the cast would look like on her. Next, with the nurse's help, I produced dozens of pictures of other children in body casts for Fairy to see. She asked many questions, and I answered them as well as possible. Pharaoh's grandparents bought a wooden wagon for Fairy at my suggestion. It was a toy wagon that would allow her to be completely mobile, despite the fact that once in the cast, she wouldn't be able to bend at the waist. She wouldn't be able to sit or stand. The cast would extend from just beneath her shoulders, completely down the broken leg to her toes, and down the well leg to the knee. It was necessary to cast both thighs so that her leg lengths would remain even. From another friend, Lee, I was gifted with a used twin bed mattress, which I put into the back of the station wagon. That way I could lift Pharaoh from her wooden wagon into the station wagon. She could lie on her back in transit and be elevated enough to see passing traffic. My last bit of preparation was several trips to physical therapy, where I learned how to lift heavy objects. Pharaoh already weighed 30 pounds, and in the cast would weigh about 70, the doctor said. I learned to squat down almost parallel to the floor, transfer a heavy object to my knees, then slowly rise with the weight supported by my arms and shoulders. It was work, but it was interesting. On September 11th, Fairy was taken to surgery and 2 hours later emerged in her cast. On September 14th, amidst hugs and kisses from nurses and aides, we left the hospital for our new home, an apartment she had never seen. There was great fanfare the day Fairy came home. By prearrangement, Mary and Fox came over with Emma, a calico cat, a gift for Fairy. I practiced taking Fairy up and down stairs. She was pleased with her new blue beds, her cat, her first pet ever, and our new home. Gradually, during the next week, Fairy and I learned how to deal with her body cast. I didn't work that week, and we experimented with just what she could and couldn't do. A child-size lounge chair, the portable kind you use on patios, came in handy. Padded with pillows, it offered the perfect slight angle for Fairy to be elevated. We discovered that she could draw, lying on her tummy on the floor. Lying on her back in the chase or in bed, she could eat, rest, and sleep. We discovered how to cope with her clothing situation. Because a bar attached to the cast extended from one leg to the other, pants could not be slipped up over her legs. Dresses she had previously worn didn't extend far enough down over the cast to cover her. Eventually, through experimentation, I hit upon the idea of recycling my old tennis shorts for her use. I cut the crotch of each pair and sewed snaps there, infant style. With the shorts, she wore her dresses and t-shirts. A bedpan was necessary too, since she couldn't sit up. She had had experience with the bedpan in the hospital, but it was more difficult in the cast. The following week, September 22nd through the 26th, my sister-in-law and brother, who lived then in Helena, Arkansas, kept Pharaoh. The two, Marcia and her uncle, Bo Kelly, have a daughter, Lindsay, my cousin, who was 2 at the time. 2 days after Fairy fell, Lindsay fell out of her crib and broke her arm. So when they called and invited Pharaoh to spend a week with them, I was ecstatic. I hadn't realized how exhausted I'd be after a week's worth of carrying 70 pounds up and down stairs. I had 5 more weeks to go and was grateful for the chance to recharge. When Pharaoh came home, we were once more alone, but it was a wonderful aloneness. Her teachers at St. Pete's welcomed her back. All of them were wonderful. They seemed not to mind the extra burden of Pharaoh's weight, the endless setting up and taking down of the lounge chair, the constant emptying and cleaning of the bedpan. At home and at school, Pharaoh soon mastered the trick of scooting around the floor on her elbows, pulling her weight of the cast behind her. Toward the end of October, I began to plan Fairy's birthday party. She would be 3 on October 29th. The date for cast removal was set for October 28th. I decided to have her party before the cast came off. Afterwards, there would be a terrific adjustment, learning to walk all over again. Her Aunt Barbara flew to Memphis once more. I had special birthday invitations printed with a poem about her accident and a drawing of Pharaoh in her body cast. We had two parties on October 25th, one in the morning for Pharaoh's 3-year-old friends, the second in the afternoon for grown-ups. The cast came off as programmed, with Kathy's removed just 10 minutes before Pharaoh's. Learning to walk again was difficult at first, but she adjusted well. Today, she is as normal as any 4-year-old and a little special. 6 months after Pharaoh's accident, Colleen's ankle was crushed in an automobile accident. She wore a cast for several months. Fairy was exceptionally tender with her godmother, often kissing her cast. Casts are good things, she often says now. They make broke bones well. Thank you for letting me share. Okay, our song for the month of January, when our theme is living love through the practice of story, is Here We Have Gathered, number 360 in the Gray Hymnal.
Here we have gathered side by side, circle of kinship, come and step inside. May all who seek here find a kindly word. May all who speak here feel they have been heard. Sing now together this our heart's own song. Here we have gathered, called to celebrate days of our lifetime, matters small and great. We of all ages, women, children, men, infants and sages, sharing what we can, sing now together this our heart's own song. Life has its battles, sorrows and regret, but in the shadows let us not forget. We who now gather know each other's pain. Kindness can heal us, as we give we gain. Sing now in friendship this our heart's own song.
The board and the general circle have been considering the activity and responsibilities of our committees and circles. In particular, they have been thinking about our pathway to membership. In the process, we have realized that much of what most of us know about the story of Unitarian Universalism comes via some focus while becoming a member and the occasional inclusion in sermons. Thus, we have decided to make This Week in UU History a regular part of our Sunday services. And we begin with Last Week in UU History. Last week in UU History, the week of January 12th. On January 13th, 1819, the Unitarian Association for Protecting the Civil Rights of Unitarians was formed at the London Tavern, Bishopgate Street, to protest the persecution of Unitarians in England. Reflecting a split between Orthodox and Unitarian dissenters, Unitarians were under severe civil penalties from laws and court decisions. It was a criminal offense to profess Unitarian belief. And this week in UU history, the week of January 19th, on January 20th, 1839, in Concord, Massachusetts, the Transcendentalist and Unitarian minister Ralph Waldo Emerson preached his last sermon titled, "The Miracle of Our Being." Offering our gifts to support the work of building inclusive and just communities is one of the many ways that we live into justice and equality together, equity together. Some of us have much to give and some have little, and together it is enough. We are enough to work together for a world where every human can live into their best and most authentic self. If electronic giving is your preferred method, or if you're on Zoom, virtual giving options are available via our website, springfielduu.org. The offertory today is "Come Sunday" by Duke Ellington, performed by John and the choir.
That was nice. Thank you. Good morning. I'm Sherry Buchanan. Reverend Michelle is with us, but she barely has a voice. So she knew that trying to read the message would be a little much. And so I'm going to substitute. So please pay attention to the message and try not so much to the delivery. Today's message is storytelling for liberation. And we want to invite you, as you hear today's stories, to think about the stories that have liberated you in your lifetime. Stories you've finally been able to tell yourself, or stories that someone else told that changed something important for you. Stories can be so powerful in our lives for our own liberation, for the liberation of individuals around us, and for the liberation of entire communities. The stories that we've heard so far this month have been liberative in many different ways. And now we'll share two more stories about a great liberator, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. As we reflect on King's life and work leading up to the MLK Jr. holiday tomorrow, I want to share the story of someone who was moved by the masterful storytelling of MLK Jr. in a way that changed his life's trajectory and left him with a story to tell. Here's the StoryCorps introduction. In 1965, the same year I was a high school senior, Tom Houck was a white high school senior when he decided to drop out of school and join the fight for civil rights. At 19, Tom eventually met Dr. King and quickly volunteered to work for Dr. King's Atlanta-based Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the SCLC. Soon after his arrival in Atlanta, Tom was invited to the King home for lunch, and Dr. King's wife, Coretta, asked him to become the family's driver. Tom, who has continued to spend his life fighting for civil rights, came to StoryCorps with his friend, Angelo Fuster, to share memories of his time with the King family. Tom said, "I was standing outside waiting for somebody to come pick me up. All of a sudden, Dr. King drove down the street. He said, 'Tom, you're here.' And he was with Mrs. King, and she says, 'Martin, why don't we take Tom over to our house to have lunch?' And then the kids wanted to play football. So Coretta asked me if I would be willing to go out into the front yard. I played football with the kids, and they said, 'Oh, we're going to call him Uncle Tom.' So they were, kidding with me. And then Coretta comes outside and says, 'Tom, can I see you for a second? Do you have a driver's license?' And I said, 'Yeah, why?' 'Well, would you mind taking the kids to school tomorrow morning?' I said, 'Fine.' And so I wound up spending 9 months driving the family and driving Dr. King. I would basically drive him around Atlanta, although he'd like to drive himself a lot, but he was a terrible driver. And he'd turn WAOK radio in Atlanta on full blast. Dr. King was a chain smoker, all right, but Coretta did not like the cigarettes. So when we would come back to the house, first thing Coretta would do, she would check Dr. King's pockets. So he started giving me the cigarettes. I was a co-conspirator with him. Martin Luther King was my hero. He was a decent, kind human being to me and treated me not as an 18 or 19-year-old, but as a man. And it was a phenomenal experience for me because at this point, Dr. King had won the Nobel Peace Prize, and he would talk to me about the movement. So here I was, did not finish high school, but I went to Martin Luther King Jr. University, and I got a PhD. Over this MLK Day weekend, many stories will be told about the impact of Dr. King's work and about the work that is still left to be done. All of us will likely hear audio clips of Dr. King's most famous speech, the I Have a Dream speech from the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. When you hear it, I hope you'll take a moment to think about how the stories told in that movement have helped shape the world we live in today, and how they call us to work hard to help our country realize King's dream. I want to leave you with a story from Gary Lounge, author of the speech, The Story Behind Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s Dream. The night before this, the dreams segment is not in the text of the speech. The night before, he's casting around looking for ideas. And Wyatt T. Walker, one of his main aides, says, "Don't do the I have a dream thing. It's trite, it's cliche. You've used it many, many times before." And King was aiming for a Gettysburg type address. And he had indeed used the speech, that refrain many times before. That year alone, he had delivered 350 speeches or around that. He's not delivering a new speech each time, and he's a preacher. Clarence Jones, when I interviewed him, he said he had this ability to cut and paste even as he's speaking. And in the American Baptist tradition, to draw on the mood and the response of the crowd. And that's what he's doing. So he ums and ahs about whether he's going to put it in. He decides to leave it out. It's not in the text. When he gets to the podium, for the most part, he's quite faithful to the text. And if you listen to the speech, and I think it's the most loved, least well-known speech that I can think of. So most people, they say they love it, but they've rarely listened to it. And I advise your viewers and listeners, just take 15 minutes out of your life in the next 4 or 5 days and give the speech a listen. If you listen to the speech, he's winding down. Go back to Mississippi, go back to South Carolina. And behind him is Mahalia Jackson, his favorite gospel singer. He used to call Mahalia Jackson when he was down and on the road and ask her to sing to him. So they had a very intimate connection. Mahalia Jackson shouts, "Tell them about the dream, Martin," because she had heard him give that speech in Detroit a few months earlier. King continues. Mahalia Jackson shouts again, "Tell them about the dream." And then, just about that time, King, in the words of Clarence Jones, he puts the text to his left. And Clarence Jones says in his body language, he shifted from a lecturer to a preacher. And then Jones turned to the person standing next to him and said, "Those people don't know it, but they're about to go to church." And then King starts on his I Have a Dream refrain. Thank you, Mahalia Jackson, for drawing out this story. Thank you, Dr. King, for telling it so powerfully. May we all continue to be moved to action and to the practice of sharing the stories that have shaped us. Blessed be, and amen. The interlude today is a hymn, Lift Every Voice and Sing. It's number 149 in the gray hymnal. The lyrics will be on the screens. You may remain seated.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let us rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which the Father sighed. We have come over a way that with tears that has watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out of the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, Thou who hast by Thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met Thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget Thee. Shadowed beneath Thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Hello, I'm Millie. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a member of the Pastoral Care Circle. Today I'm wearing a bright pink turtleneck, a blue scarf, and a gray jacket and slacks. As a community, we share joys and concerns to keep connected. Slips of paper are available at the greeters table for those in the sanctuary to use for joys and concerns. During the week, you may send your joys and concerns by email to pastoralcare@springfielduu.org or by leaving a voicemail on the church phone 417-883-3922. If you're on Zoom, please use the chat box now for sharing your joys and concerns. All of these joys and concerns will be included in the members' email on Tuesday. We honor each joy or concern with a lighted candle, a symbol of the love we as a community offer for each of these joys and concerns. This morning, David will be lighting our candles. We humans are wired to listen to and respond to stories, also to tell stories. Once upon a time are among the most powerful words in any language. In this first month of a new year, imagine that in place of a resolution, you create a story of yourself about you succeeding in the change you have selected. Storytelling, writes Adrienne Marie Brown, is a way to give someone, including ourselves, an experience they haven't had yet, or maybe didn't even know was possible. And now, as we begin this time of sharing, know that though we are in multiple physical spaces, we are together in beloved community. To begin, we hold in love all of us, those present and those absent. We light a candle for our church community. Mark McGinn writes, and Mark is right here with us today, in the first row. I have a joy, or better, a thank you to those who helped me up last Sunday after I blacked out temporarily. They helped me to my feet. I also want to thank those who stayed with me in the Channing room while I waited for Judy to collect me to go home. We light a candle of appreciation for immediate support. We have from Pharaoh a joy. My 17-year-old son, Holton, is at the Buffalo River this weekend, hiking and camping with friends. Ooh, it's cold. A joy for his adventurous spirit and a concern for his safe return home. And from Becca G, I think it's G. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. A joy. My heart is full here at my UU. Thank you all for being part of my story last Sunday when I was 100% vulnerable. I love all of you and am here for you. She has a heart. From Bonnie, a concern. My rent will increase by $200 per month in February. I am looking to be someone's roommate to help share expenses. We have a joy from Neil. Someone kind brought hot dinner and hot breakfast to the shelter yesterday. It was very well received. I'm going to check the chat box. Okay, I don't see any joys or concerns on the chat box. We honor the complex and heartbreaking struggles of our world. We light a candle for all who are impacted. In closing, for those joys and concerns that remain unspoken, we light a candle. May we hold each of these in our hearts and minds. May our community of love ease sorrow and boost celebration. While we are in multiple physical spaces, we still share space together here in intentional community. And now let us join together in 1 minute of shared silence, followed by Spirit of Life.
stirrings of compassion blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Hi, I'm Barbara Vicenti, and I want to put a plug in for Crosslines Food Pantry. The third Wednesday of the month, Roberta, Bonnie, and Millie joined us, and Betty had been a member. And their budget is slim, like everybody's budget. Sometimes they don't have the bags for packing up groceries. So we've been taking in our grocery bags. If you have them, there's a cart in the back and that we will take them in. And the pantry is able to provide enough food, but a lot of times toiletries is really lacking. If you're able to donate like shampoos, lotions, soaps, deodorants, combs, brushes, toothpaste, and put it in we'll take it in there. And if anybody's ever interested in joining us, we're at the pantry the third Wednesday of the month, generally 8:30 to 2 o'clock, but anytime during that time, we've had Arlene and Colleen help us out, sometimes just covering lunch shifts. So if anybody has any questions about the pantry, you can let Roberta, Bonnie, or myself know. Thank you.
The final hymn today is Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen. It's number 99 in the gray hymnal. Feel free to stand if you'd like and sing.
Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Glory, hallelujah. Sometimes I'm up, sometimes I'm down. Oh, yes, Lord. Sometimes I'm almost to the ground. Oh, yes, Lord. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Glory, hallelujah. Although you see me walk long so, oh yes, Lord, I have my troubles here below. Oh yes, Lord. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Glory, hallelujah. One day when I was walking long, oh yes, Lord, the heavens broke down. Oh, yes, Lord. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Glory, hallelujah.
We will now extinguish our communal and personal chalices and follow with our unison words of sending. As we extinguish this chalice, its light does not fade. It travels with us, illuminating the stories we will carry forward. May we leave this space with open hearts, ready to honor the stories of others, and brave enough to tell our own. In community, we write the next chapter, a story of hope, compassion, and love. Go forth, knowing you are part of a greater tale, one that is still being written. Together we will say, our service here is ending. Our service to the world begins anew.